Good morning, Wesley. I'm privileged to bring the message to you this morning. For those that don't know or may be visiting, my name is Rhonda Galbraith. I serve Wesley as an associate pastor and specifically as the director of children's ministry. Let's start this morning by reading God's true words found in Joshua 1:6. Be strong and courageous, for you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. The beginning of this verse is probably very familiar to you. Be strong and courageous. These are the words God spoke to Joshua after the death of Moses. Joshua would now lead the Israelites into the promised land. God gave him several promises, words of encouragement, along with a list of instructions. In verse 3, it said, "Every place the sole of your foot will trod upon, I have given you, just as I promised Moses." Verse 4 describes the large boundaries of the new land. And verse 5 says that no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As with Moses, I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Now back to verse 6. Be strong and courageous, for you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. This is not just a story in a children's book or a motivational words on a plaque. These are God's word, recorded for us generations later to know that God keeps his promises and is always with us, and we have a job to do. So, verse 6 again. Let us pay particular attention to the phrase, you will lead these people to inherit. We now have some context as to where this verse comes from, and that we are going to be talking about leading people, young and old, to something better. I want to use a key ring as our visual or analogy this morning. Think about the keys on your key ring, or better yet, get them out and look at them. Keys represent responsibility, leadership, and access. A house key for a child means that they are mature and responsible enough to come home without an adult present. Your first set of car keys means that a teenager has a rite of passage. They're old enough to drive and have ownership of a set of car keys, whether or not they actually own the car or not. And then at some point in your life, you probably were given a key to your place of employment. The level of employment sometimes gives you that responsibility to merit a key that's to the building, or at least to the office or a classroom. You get the idea? You may even have keys on your key ring that don't go to anything anymore, or at least you're not sure why you have them. That might be a sermon in itself for Pastor Scott and Stacy to unpack at some point. I'm going to use my key ring to share my story and encourage you to re-examine your key ring this week. You will begin to see how Wesley has and is still being strong and courageous in leading people to inherit the riches God has promised. The first key I want to share with you today is the key to my diary. It represents my testimony of knowing God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I was raised in a Christian home in Monette, Missouri. It was your traditional all-American family. My parents were married 68 years and were actually members here at Wesley for 17 years until their death. I have an older sister and two brothers, one older and one younger. However, during those growing up years, I did not feel as if I belonged to that family or anywhere. I don't tell you that to get sympathy or as an excuse. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it was the fault of my parents or siblings. It's just simply the way I felt. So my diary was where I rationalized my struggles and hurt. I kept it locked up. I have a lot of fond childhood memories, I really do, and one of them was my church. My siblings and I attended Sunday school every week, whether we were in Monette or in Colorado on vacation. We attended church, Sunday school, every Sunday morning, and I have that long banner of pins that prove that I had perfect attendance. So part of my church memories as a child was that's where I felt like I really did belong. I don't remember all of my Sunday school teachers, but I do remember two significant women that had an important role in my life. Maxine Furtick was a mom, and she taught Sunday school and helped with the youth group. She was my second mom. She encouraged me in life and in spiritual things. She gave me books that I still have because she wrote me personal messages inside the cover. She gave me bookmarks with special messages that I still come across here and there in various Bibles that I have. Then the church hired a director of Christian education that was also helping with the youth. Her name was Charlotte Altman, but you might recognize her as Charlotte Massey. These two women and others taught me about belonging to God and his family, the church. They taught me about the love of Jesus and about inviting him into my life and living a life called for his purpose. They gave me a new key that unlocked and released those feelings of unworthiness and gave me the freedom to be the Rhonda that God created me to be. The keys that Maxine and Charlotte had were to unlock the church before daylight on Friday mornings for the youth to have a prayer breakfast before school. Their keys locked the church on Sunday nights after youth group. But more importantly, they were willing to use those keys to open the hearts and minds of children and youth for a greater purpose with everlasting results. Did they know that at the time? Maybe, maybe not. Do they know it now? I know Charlotte does because we've reconnected. And I am sorry that I missed the opportunity to share that appreciation with Maxine. Maxine and Charlotte were strong and courageous to lead. Are you willing to share your keys with the children and youth of Wesley? I love Nate's mission moment a couple of weeks ago. His story is this message. The people in his church noticed him and his friends and found a place for them to belong and serve. My second key is my house key. My house key reminds me of and represents my biological family as well as my church family. I've had a lot of house keys throughout the years. I have 3 sons, and they each have an extra special woman that is a part of their life. I have 1 grandson and another grandchild that will arrive in February. Their father, my first husband, was a United Methodist pastor. He passed away in 1999. I'm now married to Bill Wills. He drives over the road for Walmart, so you don't see him here on a regular basis. We've been married for a total of 8 years. This family key gives me responsibility and privilege. As my boys grew up and became independent, I gave them keys and released some of those keys. But we've kept the key that holds us together, and that's a great feeling. God gave me strength and courage to lead my sons. My church family key is very dear to me. It has fit the door of many church buildings for many occasions, both happy and sad. But mainly, my church key family is the one that continues to help me grow in my walk with the Lord. When I was in college, my church family became my family away from home. I grew deep in my faith. I was given keys of leadership opportunities and my first key to children's ministry. It was here that I realized that the church needs everyone to participate and use their keys. Grace United Methodist Church was strong and courageous to lead. While my husband was in seminary in Kentucky, our church family became our family. They gave us keys to building relationships and growing as a newly married couple, and keys to a life as a couple in ministry. Centenary United Methodist Church was strong and courageous to lead. As a clergy family, we served the Blue Eye United Methodist Church, Antioch United Methodist Church in North Springfield, and the First United Methodist Church in Savannah, Missouri. The boys had special grandparents in each of those appointments that they still have contact with today. Each of these churches was strong and courageous in leading. As I raised 3 sons without their dad, my church family filled the gaps. I gave some of my parenting keys to amazing Christian moms and dads that were willing to walk alongside my boys. The Rothsteins and the Matsons are 2 Wesley families that helped show my kids what Christian dads are like. The boys' youth director, Melissa Dodd, shared her keys of building disciples with my sons. She received those keys while growing up here at Wesley Church. Campbell United Methodist Church, the Rothsteins, the Matsons, and Melissa Dodd were strong and courageous to lead. Do you remember Healthy Church Initiative, HCI? A lot of people don't remember that with smiles, but I do. It was a conference initiative to help local churches examine themselves with new eyes and develop a plan for the future, to keep the keys moving from one generation to another. HCI is where I first realized that my Sunday morning place in the pew was not about me. I realized that if I wanted other young adults and parents to have that same rich Christian discipleship the church had given me, I'd better be willing to do church differently. I was given keys to help a new church start. I was given keys to mentor young women, keys to share radical hospitality, keys to give generously, and the list goes on. The Missouri Annual Conference and Schweitzer United Methodist Church, you were strong and courageous to lead. Here at Wesley, you have unlocked the opportunity for me to know you through working Ozark Food Harvest, crocheting with the Prayer Shawl group, working the Blanket Blitz, singing in the choir, talking about gardening, helping at Campbell and York School, and the most precious is the key to children's ministry. You have entrusted me with the keys to lead your most precious commodity, and I thank you for that. I see so many ways Wesley shares keys with families, children, and youth. The United Methodist Women welcomes families to make pies together, and they really let the kids help. They get to turn the apple peeler. They get to roll dough. They aren't just stuck over there to stick a label on or put a twisty tie on. Wesley is helping families make lifelong memories and showing the next generation that what the family of God is all about. We have youth playing with the orchestra. They have found a place to serve and share their talents. We have so many ways to extend the reach of leadership within the church, and we are creating more all the time. There are a lot of amazing ministries that happen among the Wesley family. How might we ensure they continue by making them more intergenerational? This will help us grow young. Wesley United Methodist Church, you are strong and courageous and leading so many people to inherit the promises of God. I asked you to consider your key ring at the beginning of the message. What does your key ring represent? Actually and figuratively. Do you hold some keys that could be shared with this church and community? You don't need any special skills. You just need to be willing to share yourself and some time with others. One of the first things that impressed me about Wesley Church is the number of young couples and families. Trust me, this is not a common sight at other United Methodist churches. These families could use some of your keys. Think about when you had young children. Could you have used an adopted grandparent or a break from those everyday busyness of parenting. And some of you might need the keys of our young families. Someone might need help with some heavy lifting or a repair. I heard a story recently of a teenager in a church. Not this church, of course. The young man was dressed in shorts, sandals, and a backwards ball cap, and probably only there because his parents had made him come. Someone in the church approached him and let him know in a not so very kind way that his hat was not appropriate for the house of God. The young man walked out, and 16 years later has never walked back inside of a church. I wonder where this young man might be today if that same person would have noticed that the ball cap had a St. Louis Cardinals logo on it. And instead of giving him a lecture about wearing hats in church, had engaged him in a conversation about the Cardinals, and perhaps developed a relationship that might have eventually led to a life transformed for God's kingdom. We all have keys, and we have a choice to share them, loan them, release them, or hold them so tightly that we hinder others from opportunities to grow and take on the work of the kingdom. Our keys are what enable us to lead others to better things. So, be strong and courageous, for you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. This church is the land God has given us to care for and for us to build his kingdom. His eternal kingdom starts here and now. As I listened to the news earlier in the week about Las Vegas, I was also working on a Bible study lesson in Romans 3. It's some pretty heavy reading, but one part caught my attention. In that chapter, there is a list of situations that are a result of people not having a relationship with God. Lives and actions of destruction and ruin. Romans 3:17 and 18 says, "And the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes." And listen to how the Message says those same two verses. They don't know the first thing about living with others. They never give God the time of day. God created all people in his image. He loves each one of them, and each of them needs God. I trust you know God and his love for you, and we need to be about doing his work. This is the message Wesley kids hear and live each week. This summer during our mobile camp, the verse we learned and worked through was John 16:33. "I have told you these things, that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." I hate that our children and youth have to keep hearing and seeing the troubles of this world. But I'm so glad, so very glad that we can be strong and courageous in leading them to know Jesus, the one that overcomes all trouble and gives us peace. This is our hope for today and the future.